Welcome, everyone, to our January 2025 Christian Fiction Fans group. Today we have with us Rachel Hauck, who she's written many things, but the one we read was Meet Me at the Starlight, which is her most recent novel. And so I'm going to just read her bio for everyone first, and then we'll jump into some questions. So, Rachel Hauck is a New York Times, USA Today, and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. She is a double Rita finalist and a Christie and Carol Award winner. Rachel was awarded the prestigious Career Achievement Award for her body of original work by Romantic Times Book Reviews. Her book, Once Upon a Prince, first in the Royal Wedding series, was filmed for an original Hallmark movie. We're going to ask her about that. Two more of her titles are under film contract. A graduate of Ohio State University, go Bucks, which I
Bucks.
am from Ohio originally, and Linda is in Ohio. Um,
Yay.
she has a degree
Great.
in journalism. She's a
Me
former
too.
sorority girl and a devoted
Well,
Ohio
that's good.
State football fan. Her bucket list is to stand on the sidelines with Ryan Day, and I don't follow football that much, so I had to look it up, but he is the coach of the
Yeah.
Ohio State Buckeyes. Rachel now, however, lives in Central Florida, sunny Central Florida, with her husband and ornery cat. So, welcome, Rachel. We're so glad
Thanks
you're
you.
here.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. So, first, we'd love to just hear your journey to becoming an author. You've written a lot of books, but how did it all start? Did you always want to be an author? Where did this come from?
Yep. I always wanted to be an author. When I was a kid, my dad would say, "You're a writer, be a writer." He was always encouraging me. I wrote some poem in the fourth grade, and he decided, that I was going to be a writer. And he just always encouraged me. I journaled or had diaries my whole life. And so I went off to college. I went from Tallahassee, actually, where the home of Florida State, up to Columbus to go to Ohio State. And I majored in journalism. But I don't think I really wanted to be a journalist. I think I would do better now than I did at 22 or 3 or 4 or 5. But I got a job working in the computer industry, which I knew nothing about computers. So, but I was a trainer and they wanted people with journalism background because they created products for journalism for the pagination of the paper and display ads and classified ads and all of that. All of that was really becoming electronically managed. And so I traveled for them and trained and installed kind of all over the world. And I still just wanted to be a writer. And then when I got married, about a year after we were married, just felt like the Lord told me to quit my job. And my husband came to me and he goes, "I think you're supposed to quit your job." So I'm like, "Okay, what am I going to, I've had a job since I was 14. I'm 32. What am I going to do?" And I started writing. I started reading a lot. We didn't have a TV. So I just started reading. We got a first little laptop computer. And I just was reading, Bodie Taney and Lori Wick and Gilbert Morris, because Christian fiction was really, really exploding in the early 90s. And I wrote an epic World War II novel that was well rejected. Went back to work for a while. And then I finally contracted with Heart Song through some connections and people that I met. Networking is as important to writing as craft and skill. And it took off from there. 2004, I quit my job. And by now I was a manager, cut the household income in 2/3
Ooh,
and started writing full time with a $2,500 book contract.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow, that was a leap of faith.
a huge leap of faith, but we wanted to do it. And I really love that my husband was willing to take that chance.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful that he was there to support you and encourage you. I love that.
Mhm.
So, Meet Me at the Starlight was the book that we read this month. It came out last year. It's your most recent book, but
Mhm.
you've written a whole lot more. How many books have you written?
I don't know, man. My one of my best friends is Susie Warren, and she just released her 100th book. And she's
Wow.
only like 2 years ahead of me in publication.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe one. And I think I've written maybe close to 35.
which is still a huge amount.
Yeah. but some people just really know how to turn them out. They just
Mm-hmm.
have, they have very specific things they want to write, a very specific process. I even said to Susie the other day, I said, teach me your process. But we really have to process our own way. And I
Yeah.
really love the process of telling a story. I love the art of telling a story. I love really digging in with the characters. So one or two passes of a character, it's just not enough for me. I really don't feel like I know the characters. So I feel like every time I look at the story, I'm like, this is awful. What are you doing? So let's do it again. So I just really have to go through that process. And every writer has their own
Yeah,
process.
yeah. Well, I think we would all attest to you that we did not think your book was awful. So even if it was
Thank
to
you.
you in the initial stages, I loved it. I thought it was great. And I've read a couple other of your books as well. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, I read The Writing Desk, which was also
Hmm.
another really great book. Um, so tell us a little bit about the awards you've won. You've been finalists and won some awards. Tell us a little bit about them, what makes them significant, and maybe what's the most significant, meaningful one that you
Yeah.
have won.
It's funny. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with awards
Yeah,
because every time you submit one, you're like, well, this is at least a finalist.
yeah.
But the body of work that the judges are looking at, and there's all kinds of reasons or why your book may or may not final. So initially, I couldn't final to save my life. I actually submitted a not before I was published. I finished an unpublished manuscript to a contest, and someone contacted me and they said, "Oh man, is this yours?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "It was so good. You're going to win." There were six finalists, and I wasn't even one of the six finalists.
Wow.
But so I felt like my first one was called the Maggie Award by one of the Romance Writers of America chapters, and I got a call 10:30 at night, and they're like, "Rachel, you won," and I said, "Won what?" Like it was one of my first books with Thomas Nelson, one of the Nashville books. And then when she told me, I just ran around the house going, I won, I can't believe it, I won." So that one's kind of special. But um, winning the Christie was special. Being nominated for the Rita, they don't have the Rita Award anymore, but at the time it was one that I really thought would be fun to win. So being nominated is almost as good. So the Christie Award, I have man, I think when Romantic Times, they chose The Wedding Dress as their inspirational novel of the year. And that was all them. I didn't have to enter. They just
Mm,
notified me that you won. And they said later, I was talking to one of the judges and she said, we didn't even debate it. Usually you discuss the book that you won. She says, none of us even debated it. So that was kind of a nice thing. And I
yeah.
haven't entered a contest in quite a while. So usually you want every book to have a little something on its book resume,
Hmm.
a starred review from a trade
Sure.
publication, an award or a finalist or something. But um, if it gets me knotted up, I don't like, why didn't my book?
Yeah.
Because all the books are good. All the
Yeah.
authors are great. I support all the authors. That's really what I want my heart to be. I support all the authors, the finalists, and the winners. So I haven't entered in a while, but I'm thinking about maybe entering the Starlight. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. You said that for a long time your books were not winning awards, and of course in our bios and just in life in general we always put our best foot forward, and this is what I've accomplished. But wouldn't it be interesting if we had bios for whatever industry somebody's in? Is like, this is how many times I entered and didn't win, and these are
Yeah,
the failures. And it's interesting because we always try to put our best foot forward, and then everybody compares everyone else's best to their own worst. And
that is so true. That's why I told the story about I didn't even final in that one contest. And then a lot of times for new authors, they feel like, well, I didn't final in any pre-published contest. And I'm like, neither did I.
yeah, yeah,
So just keep doing your work. Just keep improving your craft and stay at it. So that's really the key. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So tell us about that first novel, which you said did not actually publish, but how long did it take you to write it when you were first starting out? And then compare that to now. How long does it take you to write a book?
Yeah, so the first one was this epic World War I novel based on the Aleutian Islands because my father-in-law had been stationed there.
Mm,
I think it took me 2 years to write that book. But a lot I was learning while I was writing that
yeah.
book for sure. And then I had some published authors read it, and I had to learn things about proper point of view and what they call head hopping. Maybe you guys have heard that term.
I've heard
And
that.
so I really had some craft issues that I had to shore up. But I did take pieces of that book and I put it in Love Starts with L because one of the hero was an author. So I got to use a little bit of it. And
Hmm.
compared to now, I can probably write a book in my first draft, probably in 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And then my second pass, another 6 weeks. And then my third pass before I turn it in a month. So probably I'd like about 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
Just because you need white space, I call it white space. I need time to think. I need white noise, white space
Yeah.
to think things through. And usually what I think is, man, this is a solid story when I start out. Then when I start writing it, I'm thinking, there's nothing really happening. I need more depth or I need something. So I
Yeah.
like to figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And whenever you create anything, I think you need to step away from it and give it a little break before you can come back
100%.
and see what it is and how to improve it. So now we want to talk about Ohio, okay? The Ohio State University, like I said, I grew up in Ohio. Linda on the call is from Ohio. We have at least one other Ohioan, but I don't see her. So we want to know what got you to the Ohio State University and tell us more about your ties to Ohio.
Yeah, so like I said, we lived in Florida at the time. I moved to Florida in 74, right before I turned 14. So um, I had finished junior college, so I was Florida State bound or Florida bound, the University of Florida. And my grandmother turned 80 in 1982, and we had a little family gathering. So I went from Tallahassee up to Southern Ohio, Portsmouth, if anybody knows where that is on the Ohio River. And then I went up to visit my grandparents in Columbus. And my dad went to Ohio State. So we always had some
Okay,
affinity for Ohio State.
sure.
And his brothers went to Ohio State. I think my mom would have gone, but she was thought the campus was too big. So I was in Columbus in June. Let's just put it that way. Columbus in June, beautiful. February, a little different story. And I just said, I don't know, why am I not going here? So I flipped and applied and got accepted and moved up.
Awesome. So were your parents both from Ohio or one of them?
Yeah,
Both of them? Okay.
born and raised, both of them. I was born in Columbus. And
Okay.
I have four siblings, and the first three of us were born in Columbus.
All right. So you were kind of coming back home in a way.
Yeah, I really was. I really was. That's what it felt like to me at the time.
Yeah.
So, and my husband was born and raised in Indianapolis, but he went to a
Okay.
small private school called DePauw with the W, not the L.
Mhm.
And so he cheers Ohio State with me.
Yeah. Yeah. So these little cute little Midwestern couple then ends up in Florida.
Right? Absolutely. That's how he graduated from DePauw, and his parents had moved down. He's the youngest of 11 blended families. And so his dad went ahead and retired. He was a colonel in the National Guard. And so he ended up over here at Florida Tech, and he had just gotten saved. So he was beginning to figure out a different kind of life than he had planned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, meet me at the Starlight. It covers a couple of different time frames and explores some really interesting concepts like
Mhm.
having a spouse who's doing things that are not on the up and up, and do you stick with them, and how do you do that? And then this world of fame and supermodels and pressure from parents to live your life the way they wish their life would have turned out, and it's all set around a roller rink. So
Yeah.
unusual. What inspired this book?
I always love this. I love anything Starlight, Stardust. I don't know, it just feels romantic to me. So originally it was called Tuesday at the Starlight, which is where I got the name Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And we changed it to Meet Me at the Starlight, which I liked better actually. But I did not know what the Starlight was. And I was talking to author Beth Vogt one day, and she goes, "What if it's a roller skating rink?" And we have this term when you hit on something good, we both went ping.
Uh-huh.
So, oh, it's a roller skating rink. And don't you know, like after that, I started seeing roller skating commercials. Amazon had a pair of roller skates up in the top corner last year sometime. So I started seeing roller skating everywhere. So I said, okay, we're on to something. So I just thought it'd be fun. Plus, late 80s is a little late for the big roller skating boom of the 70s
Sure.
into the disco era, early 80s. But I just thought I wanted to make it this iconic place. And in some ways, because I'm always looking for creative ways to show God breaking in, and you kind of led to that question later in
Hmm.
your questions. God breaking in some way, and or trying to be a little bit more using the power of metaphor to
Hmm.
show the church. And so, in a way, the Starlight was kind of the church in the town,
Yeah.
where everybody gathered, where there was community, where you
Hmm.
supported one another. Yeah, so it kind of became the central location in the town. So,
Yeah. So when you got that little ping about a roller rink, you had not started writing. You were just kind of formulating ideas at that point.
yes, I actually, so I had gone, I'd taken some time to just produce on my own. So I'd written To Love a Prince and To Save a King. So written a couple of royal books, and I had pitched the idea, The Best Summer of Our Lives, to an editor, and he wanted it. So now I've got to come up with the next idea. So I'm pulling from my short little idea file. I don't have a bank of ideas, some authors do. And I'm like, let me go back to that story of the supermodel. Like, what's that? Like, because I really felt I was curious to look into someone's life whose whole exterior defined them.
Hmm.
That was really kind of what I wanted to dig in. What do you do with that? And so I kind of pulled that out, file out, and I still didn't know what the Starlight was. And Beth and I were talking and kind of brainstorming on the phone, and that's when we came up with that idea. And Matt was originally somebody else. I think he was a handyman, but that didn't feel right for the story. So we kind
Okay.
of did. I like doing kind of larger than life characters
Yeah.
because I don't know any actors, I don't know any supermodels, and I definitely don't know any royalty other than us, royalty to God, right? Other than you beautiful ladies.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to meet Catherine or William anytime soon, probably. So I just like digging into things that that are not normal to us. Like,
Yeah.
what's that life like? And finding all the things, and you find some really interesting things online about royal life or the life of an actor. Of course, with social media and stuff, we find out things. But that's
Yeah.
kind of where that genesis came from.
Yeah. And are you a roller skater or have you been?
I was a roller skater for sure. I had my own skates. I still have my skates that I bought when I was probably 17, 18.
Okay.
Yeah, they need new wheels. And my sister got out her skates. She actually worked at the roller skating rink. She got out her skates, and she's going over to a rink when she has free night and her husband's working and the kids are gone. Got new wheels and is just roller skating on her own. So,
Love it. Kind of like Tuesday.
yeah, kind of like Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you have a book lunch at a roller rink? I feel like that would have been the right place
I
for
should have. I
this.
didn't. I did a bookstore over in Winter Park, but I really would have been fun to have done
Yeah.
one at a roller skating rink, or just, hey, I'm at the roller skating rink.
Well, it's not too late, right? You can
Yeah,
do
you
what's
can
one
always
year
get.
anniversary or you get
That's
something,
right. That's so true.
have a big party. That would be so fun. So often there is a kernel of truth in a fictional story. Are there any scenes or characters that happen in this story that kind of were inspired by something in your real life?
I don't think so in this one, but it's usually things I glean like from other people or
Hmm.
news or television or movies. But there's always something that comes out of the author onto the page. And I think, me personally has, had weight issues, gone up and down a couple of times, and I'm a lifelong Weight Watchers now. So I go to a meeting every week. And so I'm in a room with people who struggle. And so I felt like I would really wanted to make it Harlow's journey. This is Harlow's journey. This isn't
Yeah.
your journey. This is Harlow's issue, which is why we delved into some of the backstory that we did. But I think I tried to bring some truth there to how she felt, having listened to people in a Weight
Yeah.
Watchers meeting every week. Um, I think I love some things about Tuesday. Sometimes you write, if I were Tuesday, I hope I would act like she acted.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope I would, speak to Leroy like she did. But what I really loved about that is you hear a lot today about strong women in movies and television and fiction. And then, I reflect on what they're considering strong, and I'm like, they're kind of out of control and they're kind of mean. Is
Yeah.
that what we think is strong? And so really wanted Tuesday to be strong in the fact that she wasn't going to take any guff from him.
Hmm.
She was going to love him. And I think that's really what I think that's where the women's sweet spot is. Look, we're not going to take any guff from you, but we do love you. And we're going to support you,
Yeah.
but we're not going to let you walk on us.
Right.
And I really kind of felt like that was Tuesdays showing us what a strong woman looks like. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I don't know about anybody else on the call, but I just loved all the 80s references and things. I grew up in the 80s,
mhm.
graduated in the late 80s, so it all felt very real to me. But yet I thought, is this historical fiction now in the 80s? Does that make me that old?
Yeah, that's one of the things that the publishing industry is struggling with. Of course, there's a lot of books in the general market that are in that mid to late 20th century.
Hmm.
One of the hottest ones in the last 2 years was Lessons in Chemistry. So they're set in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Um, Catherine Ray's Berlin Letters, I think, is the early 80s. So I think it's kind of a publishing hole right now. We
Yeah.
don't want to call it historical, and it hasn't quite caught on in the Christian market as strong as in the general market. But we don't want to call it contemporary because it's 40 years
It's
ago.
kind of a long time ago. Yeah.
A
I
long
hate to
time ago.
admit.
I know, for real.
Uh, so your books have a reputation for having little fantastical elements in them.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about why you put this twist of fantasy in the very realistic stories that you write.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when I first started out, my first trade size was a chick lit called Georgia on Her Mind. And, I thought I was being super creative because one of the things in our market that we hear is, don't do the Christian ease. You don't want to be preachy.
Hmm.
And I get that, and every author has a worldview. And if they're not careful, whatever their worldview is, they end up preaching it.
Sure.
So you don't want to turn anyone off of, overdo the message. There's no agenda. It's just fun stories with hope and entertainment, and hopefully lead you to some level of truth for you if you wanted. So I get my notes back from my editor on Georgia on Her Mind, and she goes, "Yeah, we got to cut this Christianese." And I'm like, "What? I thought I was being so creative." And there's a character named Drag in there. He's a surfer, and he got, in a shark attack, and he thought he was going down, and his hand reached down, and it was the Lord just pulling him out of the water. And after that, he didn't want to do drugs anymore. He was changed, and he was this new guy. And I thought, oh, so what if right now we could see the supernatural breaking into the natural?
Mm,
We know it's around us. We just can't see it.
yeah.
And so that kind of became my way of bringing the Lord and the gospel, the truth into the story. And so I've kind of had fun with that over the years, without being too ridiculous, without being too fantastic or kind of repeating myself. But I always just want to show some way where the character is encountering God, and that's not necessarily, chapter and verse.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that it's a little unexpected. And like you said, we can't always see what's right in front of us, the spiritual realm, but yet we know he's there and watching out for us. And so, and I think, in some ways, faith is a little fantastical. It's like we're
Yeah,
believing in something we don't see. And so,
absolutely.
I love the way that you portray that. And then, of course, in this one, we have the character of Emmanuel, who has mysteriously saved this prince from shipwreck. And now
Yep.
he's this painting on the Starlight. And I just love that imagery that we see like throughout the book, that these characters turn to him and speak to this painting, but what a metaphor that is for all of us in our lives, that when we're going through something we're not sure, we can look to God, look to Emmanuel, and find our answers. So how did you come up with the Emmanuel idea in this story?
So a lot of times I really do feel like the Lord gives me those ideas. So Emmanuel is first introduced in To Love a Prince. So the whole locked in land story was
Uh-huh.
introduced in To Love a Prince. And I have a thing about the color blue. So it's the True Blue Royal series. And then this is Sea Blue Beach, which I had before the Blue Royal series. I don't know what is with me in blue. But he just kind of walked into the story, that character. And so there was this little town, can't remember the name of the town, and there was this pub where everybody would go called the Belly of the Beast. And so the prince and the who's the hero, and then the heroine, a young woman named Daffodil, they're at the Belly of the Beast. They're trying to solve something or do something, and this guy Emmanuel comes in. They need to find Emmanuel, so they go looking for him. And the bartender's like, he comes when he comes. I don't know. And he was like the woodsman, like the guy who just like the hunter, the one who's coming for you. That's how he seemed to me, like the one who's coming to rescue you. And he ends up walking in, and he just took over the scene, and he was speaking to everyone that was there, and he was whispering things to them, and you could see they were moved, just like we would see, just like we see Jesus in scripture, ministering to people. And the woman at the well, speaking to her, the woman caught in adultery, go and sin no more. And it was kind of that character. And then there was a carving in one of the cliffs. So if you think of the cliffs of Dover or some, British shoreline, I pictured there was a hand carved into it. And it actually had a screensaver on the television one day, and I actually saw a hand look like this carved into a rock. And I'm like, where's that? That's my chair. And so there's a little bit of backstory with that. And so that was kind of tied into the Emmanuel story, and kind of a little bit of the supernatural that the prince and future princess go through. So he just seemed like God with us.
Yeah.
It's really why I brought him back into the story. So originally there was a prologue with the prince crashing on the beach, and he always thought Emmanuel, God with us, was just a locked in land legend.
Mm.
And then when he's laying there about to die, nope, he's no legend. He comes walking toward him, and then Malachi comes and saves him and gets him off the beach. So that's really originally how they met. But it's too much pipe. It's too much story to get
Yeah.
into it. So we cut that part. But
Love it. Well, I want to take a pause here and see if anybody on the call has specific questions for Rachel that are burning deep within your soul that I haven't asked yet. That you've been wondering. You can unmute or type in the chat. I see. Let's see.
I have one.
Yeah.
There is toward the end of the book, and I can't remember why it was brought up, and I was wondering where you came up with this. You made reference, it wasn't even a big part of the book, but you made reference to a movie called Stormy Weather.
okay.
And it was just, it was so synchronistic for me, or serendipitous. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Serendipitous for me.
Serendipitous, yeah.
Because a friend of mine had mentioned it to me just the week prior. It's a 1943 movie, um, with tap dancers and singers, um, for the, well, it was called Colored, the Colored Musicians. And I
Right.
never heard of it. I mean, I love Fred Astaire. I love Bing Crosby. So she had mentioned it to me. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds, but I was like, I've never heard of it. And then a week later, I read it in this book, and I'm like, okay, this was meant. So I went and I looked for it and I watched it, and it was beautiful. But I just thought, okay, I always look for signs. I'm like, if somehow I was divinely led to watch this movie. I don't know. And I always tell myself, I can connect the dots later. Right now, I don't know why I was supposed to watch the
Right.
movie.
Right.
It just seems so serendipitous that within a week's time, a friend mentioned it to me, and I paid attention, but I didn't take action until I read it in your book. And I was like, okay, that wasn't even like a big part of the book. You just kind of mentioned it in passing. And I was curious
Yeah.
how that came up.
I don't know. I really don't. Probably what I usually do is Google things and pick things that I think fit the story. I look for things that match the tone, match what I was probably trying to do with whatever part of the story it was, maybe something to do with the Nickel Boys or something. But yeah,
Right.
I don't
Well,
know.
that would make sense because it was the movie was from 1943 and Tuesday's storyline was originally from, 30s to 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah. Okay.
Probably
I would
trying to find a movie. So what I try to do in those cases, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's we all know the big ones from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. The Philadelphia Story or Singing in the Rain, or that's 50s, but whatever. And I
Mhm.
was like, I want to look for something more obscure, that needs a look from readers. Give it a little nod. So it's probably why I found it.
That was beautiful.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah,
I'm
because
glad. That's cool.
I do usually like to, when I'm reading, even though it's a novel, if somebody mentions a book or a quote from before, I'll Google it and say, wonder what. So that was just, but I was just like, how did she come up? I had never heard of that movie before. So that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm glad that was cool. I'm glad that connected for you.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed it too, because I love tap dancing. And so I really enjoyed the
Yeah,
movie.
me too. Thank you. That's cool.
Well, that reminds me, I was wondering about your research because here you've got stuff from 1930s and 40s, and then, I mean, you lived through the 80s, so maybe you had a little
Yeah.
feel for that. But how do you go about researching so that it comes off as authentic and real in your story?
Yeah, you just have to, kind of get yourself in the ballpark, with the writing desk. Of course, there was a lot of Gilded Age stuff.
Hmm.
So probably in the course of all the books I've written, I've somehow touched on, the early 20th century or the mid 20th century or late 19th century. So probably I just tried to look for things. So I knew, okay, I've got a roller skating rink. It's built in 1880, 1882, 87, something. What kind of roller skates did they have? Where did they roller skate? And this rink is going to be in North Florida, and there's no air conditioning until probably the 30s.
Yeah.
They used to go to movie theaters because they were cold, and that would probably have been in the 20s. But, how am I going to keep this place cool? What kind of floor am I going to have in the humid and the salt air of North Florida? So then I start asking the questions. And so then I just start Googling. I go on Amazon and look for books. I we're there. We know that there were mobs that went through North Florida. We know that Memphis was a mob hangout as well as Chicago. So it kind of played on those things. Even in my town, down on that US one, because we're also on US one, I think Al Capone came through. There's an old, what would have been an old pharmacy in downtown that he was famous for going to. So yeah, I just start looking for things, like the things in the 80s. Yeah, I remember, but you still have to Google. I Googled famous skaters. The skaters that I referenced were real. What was it like to be a supermodel? Of course, you probably read the notes. I actually talked to Kim Alexis, who was a model in the 80s. I got some things from her. I had a book about this thick about the modeling life. And then you just keep Googling and Googling, and you'll find articles, and I can blow them up and just skim through them and find out little details. Because for me, it's the little details. Um,
Yeah.
well, what does a model actually do? So you sign with an agency. Then what? I really feel like I have to be, and then she went to work. But we're doing what? I really feel like I need that authentic journey of what they do. Kim was really helpful. I knew most of everything she told me, but she was very helpful in me getting a more realistic view of it. Like the fact that you model on a runway, and then you stay up all night taking pictures of the clothes you modeled. So it's really, really a hectic life. And so that was fun to talk to her and get some detail. But then as I'm going along, if I need detail, I just Google it. The court scenes, those were the most frustrating for me because I wanted a little bit of hyperbole, but I also felt like I had to And even the deed, that was the point we wrestled with, that whole mystery of the deed and having it actually belong to Lockton land. And that was really going to be another metaphor for me as well, is that we belong to another kingdom.
Mm.
So we're not of this world, even though we're here. So a lot of that, I just would Google and Google, and and every time you do, you find something else, you find something else. But I have a good friend in our county who's an appellate judge. And so I would call him, I'm like, help, help me figure this out. Cause I wanted Matt to be arrested because I just thought it added some humor and
Yeah.
some ridiculousness to the story. And the court scene was one of my favorite scenes, when Harlow walks in and the juror number 4 kept bursting out in conversation. So I just really had fun with that. And so yeah, you just have to keep looking. I buy books off of Amazon. One of my next characters, I think is going to be a stuntman. So I'm like, other than watching the Fall Guy movie, which did not inspire the idea of a stuntman. I came up with that kind of independently, but I thought, who am I going to talk to? And I actually found a stuntman who's talked to me, and
Wow.
he actually texted me today and said, "How's it going?" So that was really really fun because again, what do you guys talk about? How do you talk to each other? How do you get paid?
Yeah.
Those are just really hard things to find out. And all the books on stuntmen were from the 70s and 80s, which
Mm.
again still helps. I found a stuntman podcast. Great. But he's talking to the old stuntman. I want to know how a guy is a stuntman in 2025. So so you just keep asking. You send blind emails to people. Would you please talk to me? Sometimes you get nothing. But
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. And one of my favorite little details that you sprinkled in there that just made it so authentically 80s was this reference to Bruce Willis getting cast in this action movie. Who? The guy from Moonlighting? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Just so casually sprinkled in, but it was so natural because in their world, of course, that is the conversation they would have. But to us, in retrospect, we're like, but that's Die Hard, that's
that's
like,
Die Hard. That's Bruce Willis.
right?
Yeah.
It's iconic now.
Even that I had to Google. Just Googling all of making sure I had that in the right time frame.
Yeah.
It was when did the movie come out, and all of those things had to be Googled. And I did Google the Brat Pack a little bit to kind of fill in that holes. And then of course Andrew McCarthy came out with the documentary Brats.
Yeah.
I'm like, everybody's following me. Come on. Yeah. And well, I had one of my line editors. She flagged when I used the word tubular. She goes, "This is a surfing term," and I said, "Not in 1987, 80s." So I posted on Facebook and I go, "Guys, did we say tubular in the 80s?" And they were like, "Yep."
Absolutely.
Even in Midwest sorority girl, Ohio, we
Yep.
said tubular. Tubular. Totally.
Totally. For sure. For sure.
Totally, for sure. Well, the way we use like now, when
Hmm.
I was writing The Best Summer of Our Lives, which was set in 77, I had to be careful of overusing the word like because that really didn't start like we do it today, um, until we started the Valley Girl speak. And then that was something that ended up lingering in our conversation. So you'll talk to a teenager today and they'll use like every other word. So like I was going to the store and like I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't have any money, right? That
Yeah.
came from the Valley Girl thing. Like, oh my God.
I didn't never connected that. Yeah, that was a Valley Girl thing. That's
Mhm.
interesting. But yeah, we do hear that today.
I'm curious when you're writing, do you already know ahead of time what's going to happen, or does it happen? I'm trying not to give away, like what you mentioned, um, the mother, the mother's past or whatever. I'm trying not to give it away, but the mother's past. Did you already know that in your mind, or does that just flow and
So
then all of a sudden at the end of the book you're like, oh, this is because I was like, I didn't see that coming. And I guess I'm curious as a writer, do you already know that ahead of time?
no, you don't. I just usually you start out at this kind of high level, and then as you're writing, you realize I'm kind of writing in circles. I'm saying the same thing over and over, maybe with different words, but we're making that same point. And then when Harlow finally agreed to go back to a Buckhead with her parents, and she was sitting in her dad's office, and then she walked out, and I just knew she walked into her mom's office. And then I started asking, okay, what's in here? So I wrote a book with Sarah Evans, the country artist, and the second book, there were two female protagonists. So Jade was the young woman, and June was her mother-in-law. And at the beginning of the book, they're walking into the house, and they're kind of this rich Southern family. And she walks upstairs, and she finds her husband with another woman. And her reaction is, "Not in my house, Rebel, not in my house." And all along, Jade's like, that's a really weird response. And so throughout the story, I always knew that she was going to June was going to confront Rebel. So I started writing the scene, and I was writing in circles. Like, why, Rebel? Well, I tripped up one time, and then it just got easy. And because like sin catches us, you don't know if you have a drink or smoke a cigarette, if you're going to always want to drink and always want a cigarette. Somebody else can have a drink and a cigarette, and they're done. So, sin will catch us in ways we don't know. That was kind of my thought with Rebel. And finally, I'm like, this is boring. So I started talking to myself in the mirror. I said, Rebel, I don't understand this. And they're going back and forth. And finally, he looks at her and he goes, because you stole my son. And I went, oh, she had an affair first. Oh, wow. And it actually gave Rebel a little bit of redemption, because he always wondered, he was never 100% sure if Max was his son, but he treated him always, always as if he was. And so I thought, okay, so there's always those moments when you're writing and you realize, I need something else here. And so that's when I came up with, and we do hear stories of mothers or fathers who put things on their children that they wanted, that they couldn't achieve. And so that's kind of how that thread started. So playing with her Anne and seeing what she wanted to do. So
Good question. I'm curious. I mean, it's such a long process to write a book. Well, maybe some people don't consider 6 months long. 6 months is long. What about Meet Me at the Starlight made it worth your investment of time for you personally?
yeah, that's a good question. Well, from a practical standpoint, I signed a contract. They're paying me. It's my job. It's how I get paid. The second part is you really want to see the characters through. Like, the idea of starting a book and not finishing it drives me crazy. I want to finish it. The only way I wouldn't finish it is if I had something um, that was on the table that was earning the money. If I was writing just something because I wanted to. So I had written the two True Blue Royal books, To Love a Prince and Save a King. There is a third, To Win a Crown. But when I got the offer to write The Best Summer of Our Lives, I took the money. Because writing on your own, you have to pay for everything, and then you start earning your money back, and it takes a lot to write independently. And so I took the deal, but in the back of my mind is I still have to write To Win a Crown. If I'm 80 years old, I'm still going to write that book. And people still ask, is Scotty ever going to get her story? And so I think the biggest thing is once these characters start coming alive to you, you want to see the story through. And I really do feel called to do it. It's my job, but I feel like it's the thing that the Lord has gifted me to do. And so that's why I put forth the effort. Does that make sense?
I love that. I love that. And I think that's the same way most readers feel when they start a story and you can't not finish it because you want to know how it ends. You want to see how it all works out. So did anybody else have any other questions? I don't want to make sure I give everybody a chance. Go
I
ahead.
don't have a
Oh,
question, but I just want to say each month when we go through these meetings with authors, that everyone has been so interesting that, I just really look forward to hearing how you've put things together. And we really appreciate you sharing your time with us.
Thank you so much. It's fun to talk to you guys. That's the other fun part about doing the book. I can talk to people about it.
yeah. Good.
I just wanted to share quickly that Deb knows this. I had told her, I don't know why, but for some reason, the last few months I've been in a reading slump, and I usually like to read a lot. And I couldn't read, not even nonfiction. I just couldn't get into books. And once I picked up your book, oh my goodness, it just brought it back for me.
Oh,
And
cool. That's
and so
good. Praise
yeah,
God.
so I just want to say thank you because it really like revived me and I so enjoyed your book. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, you in your bio it says you have a Hallmark movie and you've got a couple others under contract. Tell us about the process for turning a book into a movie and what's your role in that? Do you get to go to see the filming? Do you help with writing the script?
Good questions. Okay. One, I need to update my bio. I don't have a cat anymore.
Oh,
Uh, probably I did have two under contract when COVID hit, and because of what COVID did to everybody.
mm,
The wedding dress is currently under contract, but I haven't heard from them in a while. So with Once Upon a Prince, uh, Thomas Nelson, the publisher, has a licensing arm. And part of their licensing arm is they talk to people in Hollywood. They talk to these producers. They've got relationships with them. Licensing gets you your mass paperback, the smaller books, gets you into foreign translations. And so, they have really worked the movie arm of it. And so I just got a call one day. Actually, I was at a trade show, and the woman who was heading up the licensing and making the contacts in Hollywood came up to me and with kind of a sing-song voice and was like, "Rachel, I've got news for you." And it was right after Denise Hunter had announced that she had a movie coming. And so, sure enough, they had contracted Once Upon a Prince, and it took about a year and a half before they actually said, "Okay, we're green lighted, we're going." And that's all. I knew nothing until then. So I get a call in December that they're filming starting in January in Victoria Island, BC. I live in
wow.
Florida, a long way away. And when did I want to come on set? And I just said, the ballroom scene. So I went on set for the ballroom scene, which I'm glad I did. It was a really fun scene. And Tony, my husband and I flew out. We hung out on the set one day. And then the next day, they put me in a makeup trailer. They put me in a costume and shuffled me in with the 90 extras that were going to be doing the ballroom scene. So if you ever watch the movie, when you first come into the ballroom, there's the stairs here, and then there's people, a little cluster of people. I'm in a dark blue bolero and a long blue dress, and my hair was kind of reddish brown. And then later you'll see Nathaniel talking to his mom, and there's nobody over his left shoulder. Then they cut away and they cut back, and I'm standing there looking up, talking to my husband because they put him in a tuxedo.
Oh, fun.
So we got to be in a couple of shots, and then he was. Then later on, they're dancing, and all the people are kind of standing around watching the prince and princess, future princess dance. And so he would say, "Well, we got to stay here, or it won't look right because we're part of the crowd." So you go around, and it's like, there we are, there we are. Excuse me. So
Well, so
it's really
fun.
fun.
Yeah, that you got to have a little cameo appearance too. I know I've seen that from some other authors whose books have been made into movies that they get to be a little part in them. So that's really exciting. Super
Yeah, I
fun.
think Denise has been in all of hers, maybe. And I think she has three, but I think she's been in all of them. Yeah.
So fun. So
Very,
fun.
very, very fun bucket list item for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So you currently have the wedding dresses under contract but no filming as of yet.
Nope. And I know there's a script. I think they wanted to make changes to the script, but I haven't heard what they're gonna do it. So I had a sorry, you guys. I'm getting over a cold or something. I had four things on my bucket list, and two of them have already happened. And I really call it my impossible list because I couldn't make any of them happen. I couldn't make the movie happen. And hitting the New York Times, I couldn't make that happen either.
Hmm.
So I call it my impossible list because only God could make it happen.
Yep. With God, nothing is impossible.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And so with those movies, I know they change so much from the book to the script. Did you have any say in that at all? Or once they buy the rights, they do whatever they want?
Yeah, I didn't, they sent me the script like a week before I was going to be on set. So I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was very happy with what they did with the script. they renamed the country because the director was British and he didn't like the name Brighton because it reminded him of Brighton, England. So they changed the name of the country. She worked at a restaurant that her parents owned. They changed it to a landscaping or like a lawn and garden store.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call those places? and and she was a landscape architect, so that kind of fit. And so that, but a lot the story beats, how they met, how she got over there, where they got engaged, all of that they kept. They cut out the supernatural character of Aurora, kind of the fairy godmother character, which is fine because you just only have so much space. They kept her little sister Avery. They kept her right in line with the characterization of Avery. And in fact, a writer friend of mine texted me in the middle of the movie, and she goes, "You can tell a great book when they don't have to change it for the movie." That was her opinion.
Yeah.
But she was really impressed about how much of it that they kept. So yeah, that was super fun to see. And then, I'm sitting here in this office. In fact, it was the first book I wrote in this office, and you're by yourself. It was the book after the wedding dress. I just knew the wedding dress was gonna, touch people and be successful. Now I'm writing about an American girl who meets a prince. I mean, what? But that was the idea that hit me because Kate and William had just gotten married, and she was impressive. And so yeah, you just think like nobody's going to want to read this book. And it's probably The Wedding Dress, Once Upon a Prince, and Fifth Avenue Story Society are probably my most popular stories. So
Yeah, The Wedding Dress is the first one of yours that I read, and I loved that one too. So I'll be excited to see the movie. But I'm really thrilled to hear that you, as the author, are happy with the way they changed it into the movie. Because for me, as a reader, that's usually one of my biggest disappointments is seeing the movie because they always ruin it. And
yeah,
if anybody watches with me, I'm always just shouting out. It drives my husband crazy. Like, no, that's not right. She was this, not this, and they did it this. Like trying to correct all the ways that they have screwed it up. So if you as an author were happy, then they must have done it really well.
yeah, considering, it's a totally different medium. You
Yeah.
have, it's not words on a page that are telling you about this character. It's an actress interpreting the character that's from the script. And so, yeah, I thought all of that was done really well for what they had and for what they were called to do. So, and I don't know about The Wedding Dress. I did see the original script, and we talked about making changes. So the hard part is some of these are not, you can't actually film on location, so they have to change the setting a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's going to be set in Birmingham, but we're going to look for other issues that Emily dealt with instead of convict leasing. So we'll see. It's in the
Yeah,
Lord's hands.
that's right. That's right. So tell us what you're working on now. What's the next book we can expect to see from you?
So the next book is going to set in Sea Blue Beach again, only in contemporary time. So it's called The Sands of Sea Blue Beach. So you remember there was the Sands Motor Motel. So I set it there, and we meet a character named Delilah. Although the structure of this one's a little bit different. It's going to be the two characters, Emily and Caleb, the hero and the heroine. They're going to be like 32 years old, but we're going to flash back to when they were 16, and that's when they first met. And so it's going to be kind of a then and now for the love
Mm-hmm.
story, which is the larger part of it. And they both have that summer that they meet in 2009, they both have devastating things that happen in their families. And so they're kind of bonded over that, but they also just kind of clicked when they first met. And then they don't talk to each other for 16 years. And she comes back to run the Sea Blue Beach Gazette because Rachel Kirby has died and her family wants to keep it going, but who keeps a small town newspaper going in 2025?
Right.
They're determined to try to make it work. So, I did some research and found out ways that a small town newspaper can still work. And, but Sea Blue Beach has grown. Remember that we were dealing with Harry Smith and the westward
Mm-hmm.
expansion. Well, we've expanded, and now we have the East End and the West End.
Mm-hmm.
And the East End is kind of old and run down, but the West End is big and flashy. I don't know if you've ever been to Destin, Florida, but it was kind of, it just grew up in the 80s and the 90s. Destin, it became a tourist destination. big beach houses along the beachfront. And so that's kind of what's West End has become. And they have all the money and they want all the control.
Mm.
So Caleb and Emery is her name, is about kind of helping to heal the town. And then we got a little bit of a touch of royals in this story from Prince Blue's family. We're gonna see a couple of visits. So yeah, and it's really just a good love story. And it's wow, it has a really strong family component about healing family.
Mm.
Um, just embracing who God's brought into your life. And so
Yeah. And when can we expect to see that one
July, it'll be July 2025. Yeah, it's coming up.
Right.
And a couple of nods from Emmanuel in that book. He has a lesser role,
Mm-hmm.
but I felt like he played out the way that, I'm always asking God, how do you want to show up in the story? So I feel like he played out in the way that fit the story the best. So yeah,
Yeah.
2025.
I love that. I love that. Well, we will definitely look forward to that. Um, Before we close up, does anybody else have questions or comments that you want to share with Rachel? All
Thank you
right.
guys for coming.
Everybody has had their say. Well, I just want to remind everyone to review and rate the book on Amazon, especially because that is so helpful to authors. And then where can we find you online, Rachel, if we want to keep in touch and follow you?
Yeah, if you want, one of the best ways is to sign up for my newsletter. And I try to put things in my newsletter that you don't see anywhere else. I try to write a letter to you guys,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can get news of any kind of sales. And lately, I've tried to put in interviews from other authors so you can meet other authors. So that's on rachelhauck.com. But I'm on Facebook, Rachel Hauck, Instagram, Rachel Hauck, X at Rachel Hauck. So if you're on any of those, you can follow me there.
Excellent. Well, we thank you again for taking your
Thank you
time
guys.
with us. And Krista made a couple comments. She said she loved the cover. I don't know if you saw that. And a thank you
Thank
there
you.
from her.
Appreciate that.
So we appreciate you being here with us tonight.
Well, I really appreciate you guys. I mean, we're partners in this game. So if I write it and you read it, that's really back to Krista's question for you guys to read.
Yeah,
So thank you guys so much. We appreciate you.
perfect.